All right. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm super excited to have all of you. Good evening. I know that if you're on the West Coast, it's like 5. If you're Central, it's 7. And for some of you, it's getting a little bit late. So I appreciate you making the time to join us this evening. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this beautiful deal, Tower Village Apartments. Actually, you'll see. It needs a facelift. It's not as beautiful as it can be, but that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So, we got some great stuff we're going to dig into tonight. I also want to highlight we have some updates on the overall returns. Things have gotten better. So, if you joined us before, it's not going to be exactly the same. We're going to talk about some of the things that have happened between now and the last time we've met. So, here's what I need you to do. I need you to make sure that you're active in the chat. Those of us that are on, we know this deal well. This webinar is for you. So here's our promise is by the time we get to the end of this presentation, we want to make sure that you've got answers to all of your questions and you're feeling really comfortable about moving forward with this investment. So stick around to the end and we will make sure there's plenty of time to answer all of your questions. So I appreciate everybody joining. I'm just doing a quick check to make sure we've got everybody from the group. We do. We're ready to rock and roll, guys. I'm looking at the beautiful faces on my end. All right, let's do this. Real quick, we always have to start with our disclaimers. They're not fun, but we got to do it. Basically, just because we're awesome and we've done really awesome in the past does not always mean we're going to be as awesome, okay? What that means is we do our best to underwrite these deals, and we've learned a lot from what goes on in the economy. But anything we're sharing with you is not a guarantee. We do everything we can to underwrite these deals great. You are more than welcome and invited to do your own due diligence and underwriting for these deals. Okay. With that, we've got a lot to cover tonight. We're going to meet the team, all these beautiful faces, who everyone is, talk about some deal highlights. We're going to do an overview of the property, the location and submarket, which we love. Going to talk a little bit about the rent and sales comps. We are going to get into the details of the business plan, talk about the financing, the funding. Really important. We're going to talk about the financial projections. So if you put money into this machine, what's it going to look like for you? And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about closing, what that looks like. And then when you're ready, we're going to show you what you need to do for the next steps, which is most important, is how to invest in this deal. So real quick, if you've never met me, my name is Stephen Lee Thomas. I am a multifamily investor. I'm a GP. I am also a LP, which means I'm active in running these deals, but I also believe in these so much that I passively invest in a lot of these deals. And my team was kind enough to put this superpower here, finding incredible investment opportunities and wealth management strategies. That's me, guys. What can I say? Hey, but now I'm going to hand it over to Gabriel Kraft. And Gabriel, he is, I'm proud to say this, I think he's one of the best in the business. He really is. He's been doing this for damn near a decade. Aaron, a little bit longer than that. And one of the things I really love about partnering with Gabriel is he has done a lot of things people haven't. Even in some of the downturns of the economy, he's been able to reposition properties in some of the hardest moments and make really good returns for his investors. Not only that, he's one of my friends, and I'm proud to call him a friend. So, Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us this evening and helping present this opportunity. So, Gabriel, tell us a little bit about you and Aaron.
Well, likewise, Stephen Lee Thomas, I appreciate you, brother. And this is really exciting to get to be part of you and your team's presentation tonight. I'll be brief. I live in Dallas, Texas, been here a decade, kind of fell in love with it, moved from California to Dallas, and have now called this home for about a decade. When we moved here, we got heavily involved in multifamily in other states and then kind of migrated all of our focus here to the Dallas Fort Worth area in 2018. And in 2018, we began to ramp up our exposure to multifamily and just fell in love with it. We enjoy the hard work that goes on behind the scenes, but we also enjoy sort of the very strong profits that we've been able to see from multi over the last decade. So that's me and my wife and my business partners on the Craft Capital Investments team. In my history of real estate investing, I think one of the things that stood out was sort of risk mitigation and making sure that we didn't expose my family's interests and my partner's interests to as the kind of risks that you see in investments. And one of the best things that I ever did for our business was partner with Aaron Katz because he has an extra half of a decade of experience beyond mine, and he really has been able to do this business extremely intelligently. He's never lost a dime of investor money. And so Aaron and I decided to join forces. We knew each other since 2017. I went to his meetup, and he had some blank piece of paper on the back of the wall and was drawing, "Hey, multifamily syndications." And at that time, I had not syndicated capital. I had not taken investor capital. I had just put my own money into deals. And Aaron really helped me learn that space. But we just remained friends, and that's actually one of the keys, I think, to one of the successes behind our partnership is we got to know each other really well, and we kind of saw that there was a potential synergy there, but we let it marinate until 2024. And in 2024, very early in 2024, we closed on our first deal together. So I guess technically 2023 we started pursuing that deal, and then we did another deal last year in September, and we are doing this deal here, Tower Village, together. So yeah, with that, I mean, maybe it's best to go to the next slide so we can talk a little bit about the larger team, right? And I'll pass it back over to you to Stephen to talk
Yeah.
about the crew that's taking down Tower Village.
Absolutely. So there are other, like I said, beautiful faces on with us this evening. And this is really the powerhouse that is helping to bring the deal to this audience. So we have Leslie Flores, Alexia Lawson, Janice Greenlee, Dennis Bamford, Saeed Ishat, and Phil Morse. And collectively, we have come together and strategically, we are bringing deals like this from Gabriel to our investors, where we have vetted the deals and are putting together opportunities for our investor network as fund managers for you to make sure that you are getting the best deals. So we are helping you all get into these deals without having to go find all these other opportunities. We're out there doing the hard work so you don't have to. So we will hear from them in just a little bit. They are going to help out and share some additional details of the presentation. So before we hear from them, I'm going to pass it back to Gabriel. I want to talk with Gabriel about some of the experience and the track record. I said he's got, great experience and he's done great things, but I think the numbers speaks for themselves. So Gabriel, can you walk us through some of the next few slides while we learn a little bit about some of the projects and wins you've had in the past?
Yeah, and again, it's a combined effort. It goes beyond just me and Aaron, but a big portion of this is also Aaron's success back in the day when he was doing some of these deals by himself. I think the course of multifamily real estate has been that there was a wonderful road between 2011 and we'll call it 2020. And then in 2021 and 2022, those days were filled with like a euphoria. It was like a fear of missing out. Everybody was trying to get in deals. And there were opportunities still. And I think one of the things that stood out between me and Aaron is during that time frame, all of our deals have done well. And despite some of the pain out there felt by others, we were able to have some success. So I would say in that time frame where people were maybe buying at the peak of the market, was where we decided to kind of stand out by doing things a little differently. A lot of the things that we're doing differently are no brainer to most of you on the call that are, either hard workers or have a business, but it'd be surprising in the investing world, it's not always common sense stuff being done. So it was about only doing assets that are near and dear to us so that we can physically be there to take care of them, making smart financing decisions, particularly in the 2021 through 2022 timeframe, and then also just like being relentless about finding and staying best in class when it comes to filling our assets up. Part of staying best in class for us has been finding the partners that help us with specific areas on the business. So on the bottom left through the bottom right, you'll see seven of our partners, and they do things everything from property tax protest, which is actually really big on this property project. We're going to save about $170,000 a year because they know what they're doing. We found the best in class here in Dallas. Our legal team is exceptional. It allows us to do things like partner with the crew that Steven's bringing to the table for this asset, but also things like utilities, insurance, the lender, as well as what's really critical in these assets, having a great management company. So over the 4,000 units that me and Aaron have collectively managed to date, we've never lost investor capital in any deals. We've had slightly over 2.1x return. That means if you put 100,000 in, you got $210,000, a little more than $210,000 back at the end of the hold. And that's on average. So some deals were a lot better, some deals were a little bit less. And overall, the hold period on that has been about 3.5 years. Again, some of that is a little skewed because there's been such a great up market from 2011 through 2021. But even the deals that we've done more recently have had some great success. So I would say that where you guys are jumping in is the beginning of the next upcycle. And I would like to think that a lot of the deals that we're looking at now have a lot of that same potential that the deals Aaron and I were doing earlier in the cycle had. So again, I think that's hopefully that's helpful. That we kind of know what we're doing. Almost all of our stuff's here in Dallas. I have one asset in San Antonio still, but other than that, everything is here in Dallas. I just got done driving them, so hopefully that's proof that we go to these things 2 to 3 times a week. Everything's looking really good. And last point I'll make, I'm very excited for people that are interested in the opportunity of any multifamily right now, because this week was the first week I've had in over 18 months where the conversations shifted from sort of how are we playing defense on our assets to make sure they stay filled up, to seeing improvements across not just our deals, because we do pretty darn well, but across our competitors. So I think the market itself has reached a spot where operationally things are starting to improve in the market. We saw all of our comps shoot up 1.5 to 3% in occupancy. We shot way up on some of our assets into the high 90s. We have two of our assets that are sitting at 97% or higher this week that weren't there last week. And so we've seen some strong rebounding in DFW, and we're really excited about the market right now.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about a couple deals here. There's a Miranda on Central and Pipeline. Can you just walk us through this real quick and tell us what some of these numbers mean?
This is a good example of a deal that it was in a pretty darn good location. The Miranda on Central Pipeline, one property's in Bedford, the other side is in Hearst. If you've never heard of those cities, they're really close to the DFW airport. They're close to Tower Village, the deal we're going to be looking at tonight. It's a great pocket of town because they have good schools. Something that I care a lot about is having these assets be located in good school districts is not only good for the tenants because a lot of families live there and they'll live there longer, but it's good for us as landlords because they will stay longer. They will fight a lot harder to keep their kids in a good school district. We took this thing over at 80% occupancy, brought the occupancy around to 95%. We're able to push on rents, a very linear, slow rent growth because there was a supply shock in the marketplace. And I think there was a lot of headwinds. It was a time frame where a lot of people were struggling just to stay filled up, and we were able to stay filled up and push our rents. We increased NOI significantly on this asset. If you could go to the next slide, I think that's a little bit more of the details around the operational success we had. It was really about cutting costs, which is, again, the main reason I'm so excited about the Tower Village opportunity. It isn't all the rent growth potential. It's the immediate ability to cut costs because that's something that's not risky. It's something that we can do right out of the gate without a whole lot of thought process to it. But on this asset, we had to work really hard to increase the income, and we were able to kind of do both. And so this is sort of what we do. We find assets that have some cost-cutting opportunities, and we aim to increase revenue significantly. We've increased revenue by 20% or more on our last two deals, and that includes this deal. And it came with some headaches. There was some decisions around who we had in as management and who we had as the managers, and we had to go through a couple people. One moved, one wanted to be closer to her family, and like one of them just was just she was like, oh, this is. I thought this was going to be like a luxury A class property, and so she was out in and out pretty quick. So, but despite that, we were able to keep the value creation engine, and I think Steve and I love talking about these things as little money machines. When you can put 100,000, 200,000, $500,000 into these things, and they double your money over 5 years. They're quite the optimal investment engine. But a lot of that does depend on some of these numbers you're seeing here. We drive those numbers for you guys, so you don't have to do it and take the phone calls from like the tenants and deal with the headache. But at the end of the day, the asset that you're looking at here is kind of an example of what we like to buy. I'll say that I was just there today. It's also fun to turn the properties around and get sort of that wow factor of having a really nice rehabbed asset. And I think this is a good example of it. But we should take a look at the next one because the next one is in Irving. So let's take a look at the
Let's see
next
that
slide.
real quick. I do want to acknowledge. I see Alan has his hand up. Alan, if you could do me a favor, if you're, I don't want you to lose your question, but we are going to answer questions at the end. And so one of the best things we can do is just if you just drop your thoughts in the chat as we go along, we'll make sure that we go through all of those before we drop off the call. So I don't want you to lose what you're thinking, but we also we want to make sure we get through the presentation and we might answer some of your questions before we get to the end. So Alan, go ahead and just drop that in the chat so we don't forget it, and we'll make sure we answer those questions before the webinar is over. All right, Gabriel, go for it. Let's talk about this one.
Yeah, so this one was very similar in terms of its occupancy. When we took it over, it had 80% occupancy, and um, we were just a little bit tighter of a group. I think my team, Craft Capital Investments, and Aaron Katz saw this one and saw a few more opportunities. So we went from 80% last September to 99% as of today. When I just visited, it's still 99%. The only reason we haven't rented out the one unit is because it's under construction right now, and we don't know when we'll be done because we have to get some permits. We had 104 units on this property. It's located in South Irving. South Irving is a much uh, more plain vanilla of what I usually had bought, meaning sort of lower income in general compared to what we're buying with Tower Village. It's about a 55K median income area, good schools, but a lot of workforce housing. Hardworking Latino community. It's almost all centralized around folks that are blue collar. And there's two ways to lift occupancy from 80% to 99% in a short period of time. You can, hemorrhage your rents, like really cut your rents, or you can do the hard work for making sure you're on all the places you need to be to attract tenants, having great people in the office that are creative and get people in the door, and then show them really nice product, which means, fixing things up to the extent that you can. On this asset, we saw a lot of opportunity because the previous owner had owned it for 30 years. I think that's another differentiator now for our group. We're buying things from people that have owned it for longer so that there's more value to add. And, I think the other two numbers to call out are that we've had consistent rent increases on all of our assets that we've rented out and the ones that we've renewed. So the ones that we haven't even rehabbed. And we have very low delinquency. Irving is a great place to buy multifamily. It has stayed that way through the hard times. And as things are rebounding, as we saw with the thing where we purchased in September, and we're already right before this call, I got an offer on this deal. So me and Aaron are like, this is a little early in the process, but our investors are at least knowing that we've created a ton of value. And I'll see what the offer is. I don't have a specific number yet, but it just goes to show that it's a market that people love. So if you can add value to an asset in Irving, you're going to have a good experience with it.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Now let's talk about this asset here, Tower Village. Okay. And why is this deal exceptional? Man, there's a lot of things. We're going to dive into more of this throughout the rest of this presentation. Just hit a couple of these highlights here, a couple of these bullets. And actually, you know what? I think this is a good opportunity. I see a typo here, but a good typo.
Yeah.
We're actually getting this a little
98,
bit. Yes.
134. Yeah,
Yes.
we're good.
Yeah.
So this is the story that we got intrigued by. We had an opportunity to buy this thing at just hear me out on the numbers. I know there are going to be three different sets of them at 102,800 or something like that. And then we get into diligence and we found that there was 4 units they were using as a maintenance shop. So it went from 264 units to 268. So we're like, oh, free units. We'll take that all day. That's great. And it brought the price down to $101,000 per door. But we dug into the storyline of why the sellers were selling, and we just found that they were a little apathetic. They wanted to get out really bad because they had a 10-year loan and they had been in it for 9.5 years. And we got the sense that they're doing well as a company, but they've moved all their assets to Louisiana, which is where the owner lives and like has a big cohort of assets. So they were out of state. They weren't that locked in. They were real committed to selling. So we renegotiated the price and we said, hey, there's a couple things we want you guys to pay for on the construction side, on the capex side. And they said yes. It was a little fighting. I'm making it sound like it was really easy, but we went back and forth a few times, and then eventually we got the price down to $98,000 a door. That said, whether it's $103,000 or $98,000 per door, I know it's a difference, and it means more income for you guys when we take this thing down and sell it on the back end. But the deal works regardless of those three purchase prices. This deal is extremely strong. I'll just leave you with three things. There's a bunch of things listed here, but Syed has a slide that he's going to go through some of the details. I know Janice is going to cover some of the qualitative things and show you guys a little bit more about the asset. I'll just cover three. There's a huge cost savings right out of the gate. About $540,000 that we'll be able to cut off the expenses, bringing this thing from a high 5 cap to an 8 cap out of the gate. That's really exciting. The second thing that I love is that it's built like a 1990s asset. In 1970, when they built this thing, because of where they were, they had a ton of land and they built it as a high-end, almost like dormitory apartment community for the University of Dallas that was across the street. They threw the kitchen sink at this thing. It has tilt-up concrete. It's not built out of wood. That's extremely expensive. It's better for your utilities. It's better for a lot of things. And look, other folks will cover some of the asset amenities, but it's got the amenities except for it has 8 feet roofs, which is normal. It doesn't have the 9 and 10 foot roofs. It's got all the amenities set that a 90s asset would have, with one exception, which is plumbing. And that's my job. My company's job is to go in and replace all of the plumbing so that it'll have brand new plumbing, even newer than a 1990s asset. So I'm really excited about the features on the asset. And then the third thing is the unit size. There's both huge units currently, and we're learning that there's more opportunities to add bedrooms, turning old, outdated dining nooks into bedrooms. It's not something that we had to include in the revenue projections because, as you'll see, the revenue projections are basically based on the cost cutting and a little sliver of the revenue opportunity, but there's a ton more revenue opportunity that this asset provides that we didn't need to bake into the numbers. I'll let you guys go ahead and share the next slide.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Saeed, talk to us about some numbers, man. You're a numbers guy. We have this wall of numbers. Explain to us what's going on. Make some sense out of it for us.
Yeah, let's talk about the deal summary because for most of the people on this call, this is what's relevant. We're projecting a 101% gain over the course of 5 years. What that means is if you put in $50,000 at the end of year 5, not only are you going to get your $50,000 back, but you're going to make $50,500, doubling your return. 6% of that is going to come in the form of cash flow. And ultimately, your average annualized return is going to be 20%. This is a 80-20 split, 80% investor, 20% sponsor split, LPGP, 268 units in a 1970s build. One fun, cool piece about this deal is if you incorporate some of those expense changes early on at the beginning of the hold, we have a stabilized 8 cap. We have a stabilized 8% year one cap rate. That's crazy. That means this property is a money-making machine from day one. We don't even have to touch it, and it's generating income on its own. Very good deal. And looking at it from a conservative underwriting perspective, we feel this 98,000 per door is a steal and a real opportunity for us to add value in such a great location This is in a superior submarket called Las Colinas, Irving, Texas, and Las Colinas really does carry a lot of clout to the name. The renovation budget is large, $4.6 million renovation budget relative to the size of the asset, $26.3 million purchase price. I would say that's about a normal renovation budget. And we have a 5.7% fixed interest rate on the loan. We'll talk a little bit more about the loan later on. But in summary, the numbers speak for themselves.
All
Some
right.
investment highlights. I just want to let the audience just kind of take a look at this. I like to view this investment as Christmas because here are the gifts. Great location, high growth submarket, amazing loan terms, conservative business plan, ugly duckling to swan renovation, high occupancy market, submarket, great floor plan mix, ample rental rate upside, buying at a very favorable low price. You know what? Instead of me nerding out, Gabriel, why don't we take a look at some pictures?
The ugly duckling to swan renovation. I love that. You should it's probably already coined, but the other thing is Saeed took a look at this deal and he's like, man, he's like, this is killer. Anybody who doesn't invest in this, they're not normal. Come on, guys. No, I'm just joking around, but it is. We're gonna see some photos here in just a few minutes, guys. Um, and there is some love that can be put into this. Like Gabriel mentioned, it's been a single owner for quite a while, and that in itself presents some opportunities. So let's go ahead and run through this. And Gabriel, you said you were just recently at the property. You're probably the best one to walk us through. How are things looking, and what are some of the plans?
It's just a really nice property. It's big. It's 18 acres. These 2 and 3 bedrooms. They're 2 stories. They're spread out. It feels home, and you've got the best extras in the business. You've got every walk of life kind of walking about. It's the right balance of like there's energy and life there, kids playing in the playground and doing the things you'd want them to do, but it's also like not loud or chaotic. It's just a really great spot. And we'll talk more as a team a little bit later slides around the submarket, but I'll just flip through, sort of what the actual asset class looks like because right now we've got this big, beautiful fountain amenity. We've got a great leasing office in terms of the bones, but they're not putting any love into it. A really beautiful gym that overlooks the fountain and the pool. The pool is pretty small, but it gets a lot of use because it's a vibrant little pocket, and it's got a little hill to it, but it just sits in a great little part of town across the street from this college, which it just makes it kind of a warm, fun part of town to live in, and is really close to great jobs. And so let's take a look at some of the next slides where we can take a look at the exterior. So right now, that Pepto-Bismol pink has got to go. It's sitting on top of stucco that's never been painted except for where they did a few enhancements of the stucco itself, like when they did repairs. And because the old stucco has been there for so long, it almost looks like a different color is being used. So let's go to the next slide. I think we got a mock-up of what it should look like. Yeah, we're gonna take and modernize a little bit. We don't know if we're gonna go with like the slate grays and blues and creams, or there's a really beautiful pewter color that we've been studying, but it's going to be one of those two design looks. We really love to bring vibrancy to the exterior because it's good business. It catches people's eye and it gets them in the office. You can flip through the rest, maybe spend 2 or 3 seconds on each of the rest of the slides. There's an aerial overview. We're going to do the parking lots and get some river rock in that fountain to help with both drainage and to make it look better. So I mean, that's sort of a mock-up of the future there. And one of the things you can point out from here is you can see that the University of Dallas is directly across the street. It is a smaller, uh, high end, like 70K a year tuition, uh, sort of faith based or faith adjacent education, higher education. And it is a really interesting location in that it is kind of sits on this hill and it has this big tower. So that's where the name comes from, Tower Village. You go to the next slide.
Yeah, let's run through some of the couple of interior updates you guys are gonna do.
The interiors are very clean. We did a thorough due diligence. We brought 5 teams of 3 people. We went into every single unit and we knocked that out over 3 days. Then we brought more specialists back to look at all the exterior over a 3.5 week period to get clarity on exactly what the budget needs to be for the capex. On the interiors, it's actually a really light, simple renovation. We're going to take and bring these kitchens, modernize them a little bit by getting rid of the ugly office style industrial lighting. And if you go to the next slide, we're going to replace that with these beautiful can lights. And we're going to stretch that into the living area on the left-hand side. Now, more than half the units, about 170 of them, have the kitchens open to the living room, which is what you'd expect in an apartment. It's more of a modern look and feel. There are 95 units that have the kitchen open to a dining nook that is, it's sort of an outdated feature. I mean, apartments, I know these are different, unique apartments because they were built for a unique purpose. They weren't really intended as they are now being used for like retail renters. But those dining nooks are actually bedroom opportunities where we can add bedrooms. You won't see it in this picture, but it is part of our business plan. Go to the next slide, please. In the bathrooms, there are some important features that we're changing out. The most important one, this is the before. This is what they look like now. They're clean. It's simple. If you go to the next slide. We're going to reframe and add a new vanity, refinish out the countertops, and maybe add some new pools that are a little more modernized. But the biggest change between those 2 slides is actually the toilet. So the toilet is really critical in these older assets that have 1.6 or 1.8 gallon toilets, because we have a modern technology that we install and it seriously dramatically reduces the water usage per flush. In addition, we change out the aerators on the showers as well as the faucet heads, and it reduces water usage usually by about half. Water's gotten expensive in Irving, so this is actually going to cut close to $180,000 from the expenses. And it just comes from having these newer, better technology, non-gravity flush toilets. It also means the maintenance team doesn't have to go in there and maintain them because they don't have flappers. And when a flapper's open, it can cost you $350 a month with water just shooting down. You'd be surprised tenants don't usually tell you what's going on. In this case, we don't have to worry about that after we do this install. We have a specialized company that comes in within the first couple of weeks of us owning it, and they just install toilets. That's all they do. And toilets, aerators, shower heads, and angle stops behind the toilet. Saves a bunch of water. Pool
Yeah, the
is
pool area.
very
I want
well.
to point out here when we change slides, like you guys are looking at doing some nice work here around the pool. So I just
Yeah,
want to point out here, pay attention. There's some nice stuff going on around the pool.
yeah. I mean, the pro forma vision of the slide, the next mock-up, if you go to the next slide, is sort of how we typically will tackle these pool projects. We've done 3 now, where we rehab and bring a more modern feel. You can accomplish a lot with furniture. It's not got to be expensive. Wayfair sometimes is our best resource, surprisingly. But anything that looks modern and holds up to the weather here in Texas, you've got to kind of do something newer and nicer with the surround. But this asset's actually got a pool that's in good use, good condition, and gets used a lot. So the plaster will probably need a fresh coat. Other than that, it's ready to rock and roll. Oh,
Cool.
there's one
Let's
other thing we're going to do, but you can't see it in that picture. It's okay. We're going to open up the view to the fountain because it actually has a beautiful view of the water amenity.
oh,
Go to that side you were just on, though, because I
okay.
love talking about the leasing office. Experience is really important to our business. When people walk in, they want to have a really friendly person, have a nice smell, and see something that looks really inviting. When you go into this asset right now, they're not doing a terrible job on the personnel. The people that work there are pretty nice, and they're pretty good people in the business. We'll be interviewing them and decide if we want to keep them or not. But they haven't been given the money to spruce up the experience of coming into this office, and it looks like they're pulling furniture together just like as random as you could possibly put together for a leasing office. We noticed that there was a Christmas tree in the left corner there. This is a picture from April. So it just kind of goes to show that they have not thought through the total package experience. If you go to the next slide, it's a lot more indicative of the feel you're going to find when you come into our assets. And the other two properties that I mentioned earlier, this is kind of what it looks like and feels like when you come in. A much more high end finish out and better furniture. We're going to do a lot to the exterior, particularly here. There's this grassy knoll across the street from the college, and with a beautiful sign and some seating areas and some walkways, it will draw people's attention to the apartment complex. Right now, you kind of got to look over the hill to realize there's an apartment complex there. There's 10,000 cars going in each direction, so that's 20,000 total on these. Well, I think it's 8,000 and 7,000, so a little closer to 15,000 combined um, every week. And we're not capturing a lot of that. We'd be capturing a lot more if we beautified that part of the property. Go to the next slide, please. Backyards are looking beautiful in the future, but right now it's just an empty backyard. There's 18 acres. There's probably 2 to 3 acres of just like patches of grass that aren't being utilized to the full extent. We want to bring a couple grill outs and a fire pit to the back area because we actually do service a lot of 28 to 38-year-olds on this property. And next slide.
Yeah, this is important because remember Gabriel mentioned there are some extra units, 4 extra units. What do you do with all that stuff so that you can repurpose those units? So Gabriel, tell us what your plan is here.
This one's straightforward. I mean, anytime you can bring units back online, you've got to do it. So we have sourced a prefab that we're going to put back there. It's about 80 to 90K, and then we're going to spend another 10 to 20 to bring utilities to it and sort of bring some landscaping to the back area there. A little bit of cement needed as well, but that's included in our parking lot bid. But we're going to turn the second backyard area into a maintenance operations office that's state of the art. Keep all of our stuff organized, all of our supplies, our paint, our interior renovation items, and that's going to allow us to bring those other 4 units online, which is to the tune of I think, as it will be covered a little later on one of the other slides by my teammates, it's about $70,000 a year in extra revenue, and it only cost us $100,000 one time. We can create $70,000 on the revenue side. That gets to be multiplied by or it drastically increases the value of the asset because it's increasing the operating income, and it's a huge win for us.
Gabriel, thank you for giving us that overview. I'll let you grab some water, catch your breath. Janice, how you
Yes,
doing?
sir. Thank you so much, Gabriel and Stephen. I guess it's my turn. So I'll be quick to the point. So let's really talk about the meat of this property. It's 268 units. It's on 18 acres. As Gabriel said, it already has all of the amenities that people look for. It has plenty of parking. It's got the swimming pool, be a really great swimming pool shortly, fitness center, but it also has really large units, the average of 920 square feet per unit. And anybody that's maybe helped their college kids shop for apartments lately, you know that that's a pretty good size. But these things all need to be brought back to life to some degree. They need a little bit of TLC or a little lipstick. Um, but let's talk about how good this deal is. It's actually, you want to go to the next slide,
Yeah,
Stephen?
yeah.
I'm
Let's
going
do
back.
it. Let's show
Sorry.
them some numbers here. This is some cool
Yeah,
stuff.
everybody
Yeah.
wants the numbers, really. That's what they're here for. It's really a great deal. Gabriel said it's tilt-up construction, concrete construction, so it has really good bones. And if we were to build it today, it would cost us about $310,000 per door. And we're bargain shopping, so we're getting it at less than $100,000 a door. So about a third of what it would take for us to build that if we were to start from scratch today. And everything that's around it is either newer or performing at a much better kind of per square foot basis than we are. I like to look at this property as we are buying the ugliest house in the nicest neighborhood. And so we're going to take that and make some changes. And the reason some of those other properties are doing better is because of the average size of the units, but really it's because it's the ugliest house in the neighborhood and we need to give it a facelift. And so you can see in these comps, let's dig into these numbers. So comp 1 and 2, the Rochelle and the Grayson Park. Now those are C class assets, similar to our asset, but they're not nearby. They're over a mile away, so they're not necessarily sitting in our pocket of the submarket. So, not real nearby, but comp 3 and 4 are A class properties, and those are our neighbors. Those are the people that are right around us. And if you look at these numbers, you can tell they're getting a lot better rents than what we're getting. We have the only C class property in that little kind of pocket or area. So that being in that pocket really allows us to kind of that rising tide lifts all ships there. So as you can see, there's a huge delta, and we're going to bridge some of that delta. We've been conservative on the underwriting. That's one thing I do like about partnering with Gabriel is he's not, expecting to get, all the way at the top. We're not gonna bring it all the way up. We're going to be very conservative and we're going to bring it up some, but we want to have a plan in place that allows us to hit those targets and pay our investors without hitting every little thing perfectly. And this does that. So nothing better than giving higher returns than what we expected. So that's the meat of the property. Unless I've missed anything, Stephen, Gabriel, anybody want to jump in? And if not, Leslie, I think you're up.
Right on. All right, Leslie, talk to us about beautiful Las Colinas. Apparently, it's incredible.
It is. Thank you, Stephen, for introducing me. But yes, so Las Colinas, I definitely, before jumping in, I want to emphasize that when our team or when we're acquiring a property like Tower Village, we want to emphasize the environment and the location, right? And so Las Colinas is incredible, and this is where Tower Village is. And as you can see in the picture, it's really nice. There's a lot of new buildings, it has a nice lake. And as we found, our team has found that there's a lot of people that are living here, young people. It's very vibrant. And so this is just a picture. We're going to go on to the next slide to, yeah, just to kind of look. There's a lot going on. So Las Colinas is home to 10 Fortune 500 companies. And just, Stephen, if you can point to Tower Village.
Right here.
Yeah, so you can see already with everything, if you're taking a moment, there's Caterpillar, there's Kimberly-Clark, there's McKesson, so there's all the part of the 10 Fortune 500 companies, but right above Tower Village, you also have University of Dallas, right? You can see up there. Then you have Old Texas Stadium. You have a country club, you have the Ritz. So there's a lot. I'm not going to point every single one out, but there's a lot going on, as you can see. And one of my favorites, we talked about this before in past webinars, there's also the golf course, the Nelson. And I'm trying to propose to Gabriel that we go visit the property with him as a team and investors, and then we go golfing. But there's a lot going on.
I'm all about that. I would love that. Let's do it.
Yeah. So, but then you see over here this big one, you have DFW, you have the airport on the side. Yeah. And so as a team, we found that at Tower Village, there are going to be people that are working at DFW. There's going to be a little bit of students from the University of Dallas. So it's a mixed community of tenants that are living there. And apart from that, there's also restaurants and there's a bunch of other things going on. Oh, we went to the next slide.
Sorry,
But
I can jump back here. I got a little ahead of myself. Sorry about that. Go for it.
I mean, just to put into perspective, you can kind of see that there's a lot going on, including restaurants and all a lot of things going on. So great location. Just to continue on that, so Las Colinas is an A class location, and what that just means it's a nicer location where there's going to be people who have higher incomes, and there's going to be nicer homes, nicer schools. It's just a safer environment, as opposed to a B class where it's more middle class, C class, lower income. And we've taken a look at the demographics, and we have a lot of people living there. So we're even projecting to have 400 over 479,000 people living in area and just in a 5 mile radius. And then we've also taken a look at the income. The average income is a little over 93,000. And then we also have the median income of a little over 77,000. And what that means too is we know that people that are living here are going to have more of a stable paycheck, that are going to be able to afford these house renting. And yeah, it's just to put in perspective that we're taking a look at everything, not just the building itself and the numbers. We're looking at location, demographics. Yeah, you can go into, unless you want to add anything, Stephen, we can go into the next slide.
No, I think that's good. The one thing I'll point out, and I mentioned this before, this median house of income, this is pretty solid right here. I mean, when you're looking at a B class, if you can get to 55, 60,000 median household income, I think you'd be pretty happy in this particular uh, you know DFW area. This just, I think, just really shows that, like Gabriel's mentioned, there's just a lot of opportunity here. And what Janice was talking about with even where rent are going to go, I think there still was going to be a lot of room left, which either A, gives us the opportunity to continue to increase rents when we hold it long term, if that's an option, or B, when we go to sell it, it still is a very desirable asset because of the amount of meat that's on the bone and what can be absorbed in the submarket. So while it's a nice number, what does it really mean? That's the only thing I would just dig a little deeper into, just to put that in perspective for the people on the call. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's go ahead and let's talk about the lack of competition that's in the
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood.
Yeah, so we're going even further in our research. So we use a CoStar database to find out what's happening in terms of construction. Are there new buildings? Are there new apartments being constructed? And we have found that there is nothing going on in the next few years. And that's great because we're talking about competition. Are tenants going to leave into a newer apartment? So the answer would be no, there's nothing happening, right? So there's nothing to worry about in terms of uh, just new apartments being built. And so that's important for us to see. We're really looking at everything. We're looking at the environment. We're looking at what's happening outside in terms of construction, and there's nothing starting.
All right. Well, we're gonna do a couple things right now. So we're gonna bring Dennis on, but I gotta go to a last minute school concert. So I get to walk away. You're in good hands. I'm gonna stop sharing. Gabriel's gonna start sharing, but he's gonna take it over from here. So, folks, thank you so much for hanging out. Like I said, it was last minute, a little bit unplanned, but I'm gonna go listen to some fifth grade band music. So enjoy the time here because it's not fifth grade band. All right. Thank you guys. I'll catch you all later. And thanks for running with this for me tonight, guys. Thanks. I'm gonna stop sharing, Gabriel, and then you should be able to take over from here.
Thank you,
I
Stephen.
think I am.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you,
Steven.
Stephen. Night. Hey,
Night.
look, work makes the dream work. So we've got this. Uh, Dennis, you're up.
Okay. So as you've been hearing throughout this presentation so far, that the capital improvements are going to be a major um, plan for this property. And at the 4.6 million is going to be the capex. We've budgeted about 17,200 for all the upgrades in the per unit. Um, Obviously, these improvements, that's going to be the big ticket item, because this property was from 1970, and the construction of it is very unique. They've said multiple times that this is a tilt-up slab construction. This is how warehouses are built now. This thing is built solid. 17 of the roofs have already been redone, and by the previous, oh no, I'm sorry, 17 roofs will be redone, and the other half have already been done by the previous owner. The electricity, plumbing, and parking lot, they would be brought up to today's standards. Around 100 units will be totally replumbed, as you heard Gabriel say, with new water lines to the drain pipes, and the interiors of these units will be modernized with lighting, doorknobs, and the hot water heaters and paint just as soon as we get the keys at closing. Gabriel's been in this market for a while, and so he's more or less, you would call him an expert in this area. And he's got good working relationships with the best in class contractors. And so this should save us, quite a bit on the renovation budgets. The amenities for this property, this is in an affluent area. And so we're going to have to bring these up to the standards that these people are, that the tenants are going to be looking for. So there's going to be fencing, gates, landscaping, playgrounds, the signage, security cameras, the leasing office. You saw pictures of all the stuff that was going to be done. Dog park with a washing station, fitness area, pool area is going to be redone, a grill station, a clubhouse. We also talked about the 4 units that we got by surprise. That's going to turn in. Those are going to turn the NOI to cream puff, and then so that means we're going to be able to get to have our maintenance people have a brand new shed out there for them to be working on the property to keep it nice. The exterior will be the most visual dramatic. Pink might have been Aerosmith's favorite color, but we're gonna freshen it up with some landscaping and paint, which will bring this property in line with the Class A assets that surround it. Next slide, please. So we brought in 3 property management companies to do the OpEx reports on this property. And we took the most comprehensive of the 3 and brought the expenses and income down. So that gives us an opportunity to meet the operational targets of 80 to 90% of the time. So this deal has over $200,000 in extra expenses built in. So year 2 through 5 includes over 600,000 in extra capex, which is above what the bank requires. Um, there is also some additional plans. I think you heard Gabriel talk about the dining rooms, the dinettes that are there. So they may implement some of that stuff to just if they do that, this place is going to explode. The NOI on this is going to just, yeah, it's 2.5x easy, right? So um this is oh, I'm sorry, next slide. Got me excited. So this is a 506c, and you must be an accredited investor. The links for these documents will be sent to you after this webinar, and if you don't already have them. Phil, maybe tell us about the business plan.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's the business plan. And what we have here is the 4 value add opportunities that was discussed earlier. We can actually translate them into real tangible NOI and revenue growth. And at the end of the day, revenue growth comes down to a few simple things, right? Increasing occupancy, reducing expenses, bringing rents to market, improving operational efficiency. And the math here is actually very straightforward. And keep in mind, this is the strategy that's been executed on prior deals. And of course, the results have been tracked to create these projections here. So now on this asset specifically, expense reductions alone represent over $500,000 in savings, which will positively impact the profit and loss almost immediately. We've also underwritten these conservatively, and that leaves the margin for execution. So on the revenue side, we're currently about 30 cents below market rents. Importantly, we don't need to push rents to the top of the market. We simply need to bring them in line with comparable assets. And that gives us a clear and achievable path to growth. So in addition, there's operational upside here, which includes reducing economic vacancy, improving collections and processes, capturing income currently being left on the table. So these are basic fundamentals, and it's not speculative upside either. So we're also adding value through newly identified units, which they had mentioned earlier, which will generate approximately $70,000 in additional annual revenue. And when you combine all this and apply a conservative 6.25% exit cap rate, we project creating roughly $28 million in value. Now, considering this, we're raising approximately $14 million in equity, right? So that means we only need to achieve about half of that to effectively double investor equity. And that leaves significant margin for safety. And so I guess it's on the next slide here. Yep. So we've structured the investment across 4 tiers, 100K, 250K, 500K, and 1 million, actually. And so if you look at the 100K level, investors can expect approximately $95,000 in profit. That may change, as he said, to actually more than that. And that's a total return of about $195,000 as we spoke the last webinar over 5 years. Cash flow averages around 6% annually, starting at roughly 4.5% in year one, right? Where distributions begin shortly after acquisition. Unlike the most deep value add deals out there, where cash flow didn't begin until year two, this opportunity is designed to cash flow from day one. And it's still going to deliver strong value add upside also. So it truly offers the best of both worlds. And that could be both immediate income and long-term equity growth. And that's ultimately what makes this opportunity so compelling here. Before we wrap it up here, I want to highlight something that's really important though, and that's alignment. Okay, we intentionally keep our asset management fee very low, just 0.5%, because we don't build our business around fees, right? So more importantly, we don't even take that fee up front. So what that means is that our team that's on site, managing renovations, overseeing CapEx, and reviewing financials every single week, they don't receive asset management compensation until investors start receiving distributions. So in other words, we don't get paid until you get paid. That keeps us fully aligned and highly motivated to execute at a high level and deliver results. And that's what we want. We're already seeing that play out as we speak. And we're excited to be sending distributions, which is now allowing for strong ongoing payouts. And at the end of the day, our goal is simple here, not just to meet these projections, but to exceed them, right? Because we're the ones investing alongside of you, and this deal performs. And when it does, it's a win for everyone involved here. And so that's about all I would have to say about that. So I can.
Bill, if you don't mind, I'm going to step in
Sure.
for talking about the tax advantages because it's really simple here. One of the reasons you should be investing in real estate in general is for the returns. I think it has cash flow and it has particularly a lot of appreciation on the backside. That's the primary reason, okay? But it is worth noting that the IRS codes real estate investments a lot different than they do many of the other investments that people are used to. There are a ton of tax benefits related to this investment that will vary based on everybody's individual situation. We always do a full cost segregation study. We do it to the fullest potential for every asset. And what that allows is for many of our investors to take what's called accelerated or bonus depreciation. This year, thanks to some legislation that was passed a few years ago, it is an extremely strong benefit. And in some cases, all of your cash flow or much of your investment will be able to be sheltered from taxes. And so I think it's just something that I'll leave it there. You know, I'm not a tax professional and everybody's got their own unique situation going on. But if you have other passive income or you're a full-time real estate professional or any combination of those two exist in your household, you should take a much closer look at this opportunity for tax advantages with your professional that does your taxes. Also, everybody really cares about making sure that you're not just setting yourself up for short-term success, but for long-term success. I talked a little bit about risk mitigation earlier on. What I'll call out here on our deal is that although there's two small typos on here, we have a 7-year Fannie Mae loan. It is a 5.7% interest rate, and everything else on the slide is right. I think one thing to call out to, one investor got confused. I have PGIM is our bank. They're one of 22 lenders in the country that are allowed to loan on behalf of Fannie Mae. I think I've got that number right. And it says second loan with PGIM. It doesn't mean like we're doing a second loan like you do on a single family loan. It just means it's the second time that I've signed a note with PGIM. Like they know me, they know our track record. They've got our financials from our other deal, and they know that we're great lenders. So we've got a strong loan. We put a 7-year loan term on there because we just wanted to have some extra breathing room. We think a lot of people got themselves in trouble in 2021 by not taking on long enough loans. And so we kind of found the sweet spot for us on this deal is going to be about a 4 to 6 year hold. So we're going to have a 7-year loan term. With that, I'll share a couple things that we'll make commitments to as a group here. We'll make commitments to giving you monthly reports. That's going to have both the financial information that you care about, as well as some of the qualitative pieces like, hey, we had this many units that were rehabbed, or we threw a resident event, and here's some pictures for it. So we do a good job of monthly both financial and qualitative reporting. But distributions come out, okay, my commitment is quarterly, at least, that we will distribute. I put a lot of my own capital in these deals. For Tower Village, between me and my partners, it's going to be at least $750 to $1 million. So I like the distributions to come in monthly, but the prudent thing to do is to get quarterly distributions going for a few quarters and then switch to monthly. Our team is a pretty tight process. My CFO is pretty savvy, so we end up transitioning to monthly distributions eventually, but it starts out as quarterly. So my commitment is quarterly at the minimum, but we will try to move to monthly distributions in as early a time frame as possible. And that'll probably look like once we really feel like we've fully stabilized to the maximum of our ability the deal and done all the CapEx. So about 6 months in. We have annual tax preparations where, again, I'm going to make an aggressive commitment because I feel like I need to push my team. Every year for the last 3 years, we've met this commitment, but it is that we will get you your K1, which is what's created when you do an investment like this so that you can give it to your tax professional. They can tell you how much tax benefits you're able to take advantage of. We'll provide that to you by March 1st every year. That's our commitment. The first year is the hardest, so it's the year that I have the most risk of over-promising and under-delivering, but we have some strong systems in place that my CFO has put in place to allow for that. If there's a refinance or we sell the property, it's very straightforward. This special purpose vehicle that Steven and his team are putting together is 80-20 split, so you guys will get paid out, and whether it's a refinance or they sell the property, that goes to you as investors. And with that, Steven stepped out, but I will allow myself to try to fill those very large shoes. What would the next steps be if you're interested in Tower Village? It's really clean and easy. The team will send out this information and the relevant links afterwards, because sometimes people prefer to go into their email, maybe review it side by side with the spouse or somebody that's a decision maker. But another alternative is just to take out your phone right now and scan the QR code, or to send a text message to the person that invited you to this call, whether that's Steven or that's Dennis or Janice or Leslie or one of our other friends on the call. Just reach out to the people that you know that are related to this deal and have a conversation with them about investing. It's a pretty straightforward process. With that, we're a little over an hour, but I saw a question that I can't wait to jump on and answer in the chat. There were some really great questions in the chat, so I wanted to get to Ricardo's question. Ricardo, are you still on? If you could just ping me a yes or a no. One other thing to call out, if Janice invited you to the call, then she has a separate link that she's going to send out, a little bit more of a streamlined process for her investors. So just be on the lookout. If Janice is the person who got you on the call, she'll reach out to you directly as she follows up after this call. So, okay, Ricardo, I'm going to answer your question first, and then BB and MB Blaze, I'm going to answer your question, hopefully in the same swing of things. You should see a pause here for just a second. while I share with you all my entire desktop. So let me share my full desktop. I'm
So
going to
Gabe,
jump in.
so Gabriel,
Okay.
I would, so I know Ricardo, and so we both kind of geek out on the market analysis. And I think the first time that
Huh?
I met you, we were talking about market analysis, and we were saying that this market, the MSA, was going to be oversupplied, severely oversupplied. But as we know, the real estate is local, very local, right?
Yeah,
And so when we get down and we start looking at it, the Irvington and the Las Colinas area, that you've got down into that, micro, not macro. And
yeah.
so it shows that this is a good deal. There is nothing being built, and it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be good. It's very good.
Let me speak to the specifics though, because it sounds like
Yeah.
Ricardo is knowledgeable about the impact of what I will call the supply shock era of
Yeah.
2023 and 2025. So I just did a presentation on this last night, and I'll say that this presentation slide or two that I'm going to go through, that it aligns perfectly with what I'm experiencing real time as an owner operator that goes to the weekly calls and listens to my team tell me how we're doing and how our competitors are doing, because we make them go every Monday to see how the competition is doing. Right now, we are bouncing back forward. I'm not sure where you got your data from, Ricardo. So I have a slide that has slightly different data than what you showed. I think the data you were putting there for me in the commentary related to sort of the supply shock applies more to 23, 24, and 25, particularly when you're in a premium location like Las Colinas. But let's just talk about DFW in general right now. We had a lot of new supply come online to the tune of 39,000 deliveries in 2024 and 32,000 in 2025. That has dropped off a cliff. The starts are at 12K for 2026, and they're lower projections for 2027 because what the investors on the new development side need is about a 7% return on invested capital. And the best projects right now are 6 to 6.5%. So they can't make them pencil. They can't even make a weak project work right now. It's really going to be tough for them to pick this up and accelerate forward. But it's something that we've learned we need to keep our eye on. The data point that I think is really critical here is, well, what is the demand moving forward? And I'm going to give you guys all a rough estimation in any market to figure out what is the demand in a given projected year for apartments. You take the population growth and you divide by 6. It's just a weird factoid about larger markets. If you divide by 6 of the future population growth, you should have what the demand is going to be. Now, 2024 and 2025, the demand, if you took, it was 180,000 people to 150,000 people between those 2 years, were moving here in a given year. So we'll take something that's easy to divide by 6. Let's take 180 as the max year. That meant you needed about 30,000 units, right, to be developed. 23, it was right on point. 24, we hyper supplied. We created about 9,000 more units than we needed. And 32,000 of last year, you say was like where you needed, but they had already oversupplied the year before. So those were leasing up. And we felt that as owners. Next year, it falls off a cliff and it's only about 60% of the demand needed. Now there's some backfill from previous years, 24 and 25, that need to be filled up. So I think net 2026 is going to be a moderate year where we're not projecting rent growth. I think that's a prudent thing to do now. If you find a deal that's below market or a deal that's in an exceptional pocket like we have with Tower Village, you can add some value there. But the demand formula is that not just 2026, but in 2027, every year moving forward, we need at least 20,000 units because there's 400 people moving here a day, right? Every year we add about 140, 150,000 people. That's like a town the size of Waco, Texas, added to Dallas every single year. So the demand never left. The demand was never a problem. We've got business migration. We've got home ownership that's unaffordable. And, for many years, we've been in the top 1 or 2 or 3 markets for growth. It's just that 24 and 25 was where we felt the hardest pressure of that supply shock. So I hope I answered your question. Again, my data is around sort of we oversupplied 24 and 25. 26 and 27 will be undersupplied, but it will definitely more than balance itself out. And Dallas will not be a zero rent growth city for very long. It's going to be the biggest city in the country eventually. But for the immediate term, for this hold period, we're in really, really strong fundamentals, mainly because of the things on this slide related to the resilience of the market and all that business migration and the unaffordability of home ownership.
Were you
It's not a doom and gloom in Dallas right now. Hope that helps.
Gabriel, we
were
can't
you
see
supposed
your
to be
slide if
sharing?
you're showing us one.
Oh shoot! I'm not sure. I haven't been showing you anything.
Nope.
Yeah, Steven's face.
There
You guys
you
seeing
go.
this?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
This is the slide related to supply on the supply side. Let's see. Oh gosh, you guys have been looking at Steven's face that whole time. Sorry. So then, Ricardo, back to what I was trying to show you a second ago. This is sort of the slide to kind of walk through the path of the last 5 or 6 years. I hope this is helpful, but it's sort of how we've seen it. There was a euphoria, peak valuations, people were overpaying. Then there was a surprising supply shock. They just built a lot more than people thought in a shorter period of time, which caused some distress. And real time right now in 2026, we're seeing the resilient recovery sort of rebalancing opportunity. And we think that that is like the ideal time to buy because by next year, we're not going to have that crazy low basis that we all are enjoying as buyers right now. Again, I'm going to flip through this a little fast because I thought I was sharing it while I was talking to it. Where I was sharing the data is on that left-hand side on this chart you see. 2023, we needed about 30,000 units. We delivered about 30,000 units. 2024, we started hyper supply. We over delivered about 9,000 units that year and about 2,000 units the year after, maybe even a little more than that because the demand was a little lower in 24 and 25 than people expected because of a couple things. So it was maybe 25 to 20,000 units on the demand side. And again, the math there is take a look at the population growth and divide by 6, and that tends to be your demand number in a given year. So if you want to figure out what's the demand going to be in 2028, try to figure out a smart projection for 2028 related to how many people they think are going to move here to Dallas-Fort Worth. And that will sort of answer your question. But 2026 deliveries are not coming. They're still absorbing some of the 2024 and 2025 deliveries. So there's not an expectation of growth in 2026, but 27 and beyond, there will be. And I'm very confident that we will see that. It's not something that you write aggressively into your underwriting right now because you don't have to. But the demand never left. We continued to add lots and lots of people. Demand can, apex, and but all that means is it's slowing down from a very, very fast rate. And we still have that rate going, which is why sort of many of the third-party projections are that things are going to go even better than we're anticipating in the way that we underwrote this. And we see that dislocation right now in buying deals like Tower Village that are super well located, great bones, and we're able to buy them under $100,000 per door, which is crazy because of some of the things that you mentioned in your comment. I hope that's helpful. And sorry I wasn't presenting when I was talking to the slides earlier. I really didn't mean to go on for too long around this, but I think it's critical because it's something I ask myself a lot about of whether or not we're doing this at the right time. The other thing I'll point out is just this last slide around the window because it doesn't. I'm not like aggressively trying to buy a lot of deals. We like to buy anything that makes sense in the marketplace and no more. So we are very, very cautious, which is why we looked at 155 deals. This was the one that we picked out of that 155, and we won it because when we're focused on it, the brokers know that's going to be our deal. So as a team, we were able to take this one down. I think 2027, there will be some stabilization where there will still be great opportunities to buy. So, this is no like a doom and gloom. You got to get in Tower Village. It's the only deal that's ever going to be great. It's a great deal on its own merits. But I think that 2026 and parts of 2027, there'll be some great opportunities. I don't think that's going to stick around in perpetuity. I think by late 27 and by 2028, we'll see the recovery. And in Dallas, international investors West Coast, East Coast investors, and I mean the big investors, the ones that are investing billions and trillions of dollars, they love Dallas. Like New York used to be and like LA used to be, Dallas is their new favorite one to invest in. It doesn't mean that the fundamentals are always there. I think there was a lot of bad opportunities to buy in 2021 and 2022 if you weren't looking hard enough. But anyways, I didn't mean to turn this into the talking head session around the market, but I thought it was a great question because we have put a lot of thought into is now the time to move? And we think if you can buy in a period of fear while things are rebalancing, it's where the real opportunities are. It's hard to do. It is scary for me to put $1 million into a deal every time, but particularly when we're coming out of these deals where we've had to work so hard to have success. But when we look at all the data and we take a look at what's happening real time on the ground, we think that tension and that bottom of the market has been found. And I know that's been said before, but we really see a lot of data that supports it this time through. Hope that's helpful. And with that, team, thank you so much for hosting this again. This is an opportunity for us to talk about the deal Tower Village in the context of improved figures and the retraded sort of purchase price, as well as some of the information we found out during due diligence. There was one person that asked about
dining rooms and bedrooms and dining
yeah, and I have a
tables.
slide on that. You know, I got to have a slide for it. So
Of
look,
course.
this is another opportunity for me to talk about this deal that I love very much, but that I'm prudent to stay, cautious of falling in love with too much. But we just kept finding opportunities with this thing. So this is the opportunity that we weren't talking about until yesterday. Okay, we decided that we had done enough research with the city of Irving. We'd done enough diligence to figure out what the cost estimates are going to be. By the way, they're slightly over $1,000. They're not even $2,000 to do this change. But on 9 of the one bedroom, one baths, 36 of the two bedroom, one and a half baths, 32 of the three bedroom, two bedroom, two baths, and 18 of the three bedroom, two baths, we can add a bedroom. So a 1-1 becomes a 2-1, a two bedroom, one and a half bath becomes a three bedroom, one and a half bath, and so on and so forth. The really juicy part of this is the two bedrooms and the three bedrooms. They become very attractive when you add a bedroom because the marketplace tends to have renters that share the expenses in the household. So this means that if you and your kid and your sister and her kid decide to move in together, it can make a lot more sense when you have a three bedroom, two bath versus a two bedroom, two bath. And it becomes something that people are willing to pay for. It's a premium that households are willing to pay $100 to $200 more, or even $250 more for those two bedroom to three bedroom conversions. And the marketplace doesn't have any four bedroom, two baths, and we can create them for the first time. So we worked with our property management company and our diligence team, and we were like, look, these nooks don't do anything for us. People don't do that anymore. They don't have an offset dining nook. They want the living space for the kitchen to be open to the living room. And so we're going to do that flip and that conversion for a little over $1,000 and drive significant value increase throughout the property. But it's none of that is baked into the numbers that the team showed you tonight. That is just extra, we'll call it extra gravy. We think it's about $300,000 of extra revenue. We already told you that if we can get to the $900,000 in extra revenue number, we've doubled the value of this asset. We think there's 1.8 in the deal without this. We think there's 2.1 in increased revenue with this additional add. And what we may do is do a little piece of it and save the rest of the conversions for the next buyer. So this is also a way that we can use the value creation as an incentive for the next buyer and potentially speed up the process so that it's not a 5 or 6 year hold, but a 3.5 or 4 year hold where we're still able to get to the same returns. I hope that was worth the extra time, and I apologize. I know it's late in people's nights, and I should probably stop talking, but I get excited about this stuff and kind of a nerd when it comes to multifamily. So I appreciate the extra grace of allowing me to talk about that addition.
Gabriel, can I jump in? If you don't mind, I want to answer that question directly a little bit more. They want to know where the dining room tables are going to go, and I want to answer that. I don't think most apartment renters are looking for a dining room. It's not typical. And
Yep,
so typically they will combine like a small dining area in the living area. And there is
exactly.
plenty of space because these are big units for that to happen.
Exactly. And that's the more normal experience in an apartment. You walk in that front door and you're in the living space, and there's a smaller table close to the kitchen where there's supposed to be an opening. And right now, they don't have an opening to the living room. So we're going to take some drywall out of the living room side, put some drywall in on the other side that faces the dining nook, put a door in, and all of a sudden you have a bedroom. Because the one thing that it needed to have that all of them already have is a window. So we're really set for that extra bedroom.
Yeah, that's a good point, Janice, because when I used to live in apartments, I actually really didn't care for a dining table, so I can relate to that.
So,
If anything, people will take those circular tables that can fit about 3 to maybe 4 if you're pushing it chairs, and put that right in the corner of the living room, and that's where they get set up
right,
for eating their meals.
right.
There's also, oh, sorry, to be clear, there's also it's not in this view of it, but there's a dining what would you call that? Like a counter. There's a counter space that we build in when you have an opening to the kitchen. So that's something that we'll be adding, which is basically it's a place where you would tuck 2 to 3 dining chairs in order for you to have an opening to the kitchen where people could sit and have a meal while they're facing the people that are cooking the meal, if they're or looking at the kitchen. So that's additional seating space that a lot of people use, and that's kind of the more modern look and feel of an apartment that these folks just back in the 70s when they designed this thing weren't thinking through.
Right. Now it looks like you've got one more question. Do we know how many of these residents are
Yeah,
university students?
somewhere between 12 and 18% at any given time. It's not a huge amount, and many of those are the graduate students that are trying to save a buck. The actual undergrads, it's a really expensive school, and so the most of the undergrads live on the on-campus housing that was built 10 years ago. When they built the on-campus housing, they sold this property to the current group that owns it, and they told that group you can't resell the property for 8 years. And so that's why we have this opportunity. That group wants out, was sort of ready to sell a while back, doesn't want to do the capex, and it's not a student housing property because only, like I said, between 12 and 18%. Right now, we did the lease audit; it's 15% right now, and so it's less student driven. But there's 30% of the population that is young working adults. So it's got a lot of 25 to 35-year-olds that work in Las Colinas. Las Colinas has a lot of those higher end jobs.
Yep.
Yep. And the bar option with the high chairs is what we do on our other assets.
All right.
All right, team, thank you so much. Additional questions, shoot them to your representative on the call. And thank you all for letting me eat into your either post dinner or pre dinner hours. I'm off to get some dinner myself, but team, everybody on the call, really appreciate you all.
Thanks, Gabriel. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Gabriel. Thank
Thank
you, everyone.
you.
Appreciate it.
Have
Thank
a good
you.
night.
Bye.
Have a
Night.
good night.